I would like to call the meeting to order for Monday, January 28th. In accordance with Section 28 of the Police Services Act and our own procedural bylaw, the board is required to elect a chair and vice chair at its first meeting each year. I will now open the floor to nominations for the position of chair.
I would like to nominate Councillor Diane Deans as chair.
Do I have a seconder? There being no further nominations, I would like to call for a motion to close the nominations for the position of chair. Seeing only one nominee, Member Deans, you have been declared the chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board. I'll now turn the meeting and subsequent election of vice chair over to you.
Okay, thank you. So I would now like to open the floor to nominations for the position of vice chair. Do I have a mover? Member Velikat and seconder? Member Egline? Okay, any other further nominations? Seeing none, I would like to call for a motion to close the nominations.
Okay. Oh. Sorry, my microphone wasn't on. I would like to nominate Member Smallwood, please.
Good point. We do need a member. Okay. So, and Councillor Egli, you're seconding. And are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I would like to close nominations and declare, I take it you will accept the nomination? Okay, good. So we'll declare you Vice Chair of the Police Services Board for 2019. Okay, so before we begin the agenda tonight, I would like to acknowledge, are they still here? Matt Pearson's group? Is Matt here? No, he's gone? Okay. He had his second-year journalism students from Carleton here, so I told him I would acknowledge them, but they seem to have left. No. The students, are the students from Carleton here? Oh, look at that. Okay, so welcome to the second-year Matt Pearson's journalism students from Carleton University. Let's give them a welcome. Okay. Okay, so on the ceremonial items, the Ottawa Police Gala check presentation to the Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group Foundation, the Great Canadian Theatre Company, and Beechwood Cemetery. Are they all here? Yeah? Yeah. Okay, Chief, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The 9th annual Ottawa Police Gala was held on October 27th, 2018 at the Shaw Centre. It was another huge success with regards to recognizing and celebrating the service of our members to the community while raising funds to improve the lives of residents. I'm happy to report that close to $99,000 was raised to support our community. The Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group, or OSEG, was selected as the Tier 1 beneficiary for their creation of a new program giving at-risk youth opportunities to gain valuable work experience and expose them to new career avenues. Funds raised will provide financing for 3 years of this program. The Great Canadian Theatre Company was selected as beneficiary for their work with kids. Through referrals from the Ottawa Boys and Girls Club, their program teaches language, empowerment, and self-confidence to help students thrive into adulthood. Both programs provide skills and opportunities for youth to create brighter futures for themselves. As well, gala proceeds were donated to the Beechwood Cemetery for the Ottawa Police Service Memorial Cemetery as a way of honoring those who have dedicated their lives to serving our community. On ressent une grande fierté du fait d'avoir un lieu qui nous est propre et où on peut pouvoir témoigner notre respect envers vos frères et sœurs qui sont morts en service ou nous ont quittés. Au-delà de l'événement en soi, on peut constater les effets durables du gala, comme les fonds que nous recueillons pour aider les organismes de bienfaisance locaux à proposer aux plus vulnérables de nos citoyens des services et des programmes d'une grande nécessité. None of this would have been possible without our support of our sponsors. The generosity and commitment of sponsors have demonstrated by supporting the gala confirms why this city is one of the best places to live. We appreciate every sponsor, donor, and volunteer. We could not have accomplished any of this without them. The 10th Annual Ottawa Police Service Gala will take place on Saturday, November 9th, 2019, at the Shaw Centre. And the application process for beneficiaries will us enhance the safety of our community while keeping you completely anonymous. It's important that when you see something happening in your neighborhood that you contact us, whether it's through Crime Stoppers or by filing a report online or calling us. 2 weeks ago, our missing persons section began an investigation into the disappearance of Susan Kuplu. Last week, that search became a homicide investigation. 2 people are now charged with second-degree murder in her death. This evening, we have a presentation by Deputy Chief Steve Bell and his team on improvements we are making to community policing. This past weekend, we saw an example of how we are responding to community needs. Officers have received public complaints about drug trafficking on a Montfort Street address in Vanier. Working with a community police officer, frontline officers conducted surveillance on the property. And with the assistance of other investigative techniques, a search warrant was obtained by a drug unit and executed on Saturday. 9 people were found in the residence, and one of the residents of the house was arrested. A quantity of 3 different types of morphine and oxycontin and digital scales were found. One man is facing several charges, including possession for the purpose of trafficking. While this was a small-scale dealer, we recognize the disruption this type of activity can have on a neighborhood. Today, I'm announcing publicly my intent to retire at the end of my current contract, which expires on May 4th, 2019. For 35 years, I've served this community with pride as a police officer. For the past 7 years, I've had the distinct privilege and honor to lead the best police service in Canada. The nation's capital is blessed to have women and men of such high caliber who are committed and passionate about keeping Ottawa safe. Our civilian and sworn members honor the uniform they wear and the police service they represent. Time after time, they have stepped up and faced adversity on many levels with courage and protected our community. Our members understand that we are here to serve our community first and foremost. In the coming months, I'm sure that I'll have the opportunity to thank all those who have helped me achieve this position. I've been fortunate to have been supported by an amazing team, and together we have accomplished a great deal. I'm proud of our collective effort, but we have more work to do. The Ottawa Police Service is fortunate to have the right people who have the experience and the ability to continue leading this amazing police service into the future. As we transition to new leadership, I remain focused on supporting our members, presenting a budget that meets our emerging community needs, submitting our business plan that provides a roadmap for the next 3 years, and supporting my executive and the board in developing a transition plan. Madam Chair, that's my verbal report.
Okay, thank you very much for your verbal update. And Chief, on behalf of the board, we want to wish you all the best in your upcoming retirement. You have certainly overseen the service through some challenging days and times and issues, and we have very much appreciated your leadership. So we look forward to working with you over the next few months as the board begins its search for your successor. One of the items in camera this evening is for the board to begin its discussions on the process we wish to follow for the recruitment of a new chief. So we will be starting that conversation later today. Any questions to the chief on his verbal report? Seeing none, received. Item number 2, community policing. Deputy Chief Bell.
Madam Chair, community policing is a cornerstone of how we do business here in Ottawa, and we want to continue informing and educating the board and the community as to what we do as a police service to make sure that we continue building relationships and helping prevent and solving crimes. So I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Chief Steve Bell, because I've run out of things to say, Steve.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us tonight. So what I'd like to start off by saying is thank you for your interest in community policing. This board, as we've started to develop, as they've started to come together, has been really clear that community policing is an important issue to you. We know that's an issue that extends from the community as well as from other councillors, and it's something that we take very seriously. Everybody knows that in the last couple of years we've changed our service delivery model. At the beginning of January 2017, we implemented the service delivery model that we're using right now, and in that we knew that before and during the early days of implementation there was lots of discussion around how are you going to deliver community policing, what is community policing going to look like moving ahead. One of the things we know is the new service delivery model created more flexibility with our resources. It increased the number of officers on the front line at any given time. It also created better systems to bring information in from our community through formalized community networks, or a bunch of things we're going to get into tonight in terms of details. One of the areas that we've heard loud and clear is that the community didn't see the speed in response to the issues that they were identifying to us, that we had some service delivery gaps. We heard that, we've listened, and we're in the process of making changes to address that gap. Since June of last year, we've had inspectors and staff sergeants talking to frontline members, talking to members of the community, and trying to figure out what is our best way forward to make sure that we're being responsive to the community from a community policing perspective. What we're going to lay out for you tonight is the plan that we have to move ahead and discuss what we're doing currently and what we plan to do through the rest of the year. We believe that the plan that we've developed addresses those concerns that have been identified. Community policing is actually the most important function that we do as a policing service. Broadly defined, it's about police and community coming together to identify crime and social disorder issues and figuring out how we respond to those to make the communities and neighborhoods that people live in safe. In Ottawa, we know that community policing is everyone's responsibility. All of our officers have a responsibility to engage in it. And we know that we're most effective when we're in communities, being visible and present, listening to the concerns of the communities. Whether it's foot patrol, bike patrol, our traffic officers enforcing traffic in different neighborhoods, officers getting out of their car, talking to neighbors in different neighborhoods, our school resource officers engaging in the communities they're in. We know that it's a crucial and important and one of the most important functions that we deliver. The list of community police activities that we engage in goes on and on. What we're going to talk to you tonight about is the specifics around how we plan to improve them and refine the gaps that we've seen over the past years in our delivery. So I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent McKenna to start to take us through that.
So some of the successes that we've had with our community policing is how we've addressed problem addresses. This goes in teamwork with support from the city, whether it's through our bylaw services or fire. We've had success in managing and addressing some problems with some hotels, some different theft from vehicles in some specific areas, but we've also had our own internal units, such as example the chief spoke about how we did identify a problem matters and how our drug unit then came and helped with the search warrants at that property. We've also had success with a number of our POP projects. And how do we come into this information? Well, this is information where our community has identified concerns at a neighborhood level, whether it be at an address or at a business. This is also brought to us by our community police officers. We know in the South End we've had success with working with our Guns and Gangs unit and our pivot team and frontline deployment on specific areas there in relation to our shootings. And to date this year we've seized 4 crime guns. Our traffic services will continue to be evidence-based, meaning we have heard from the community via our online complaints that they send to us about specific areas. A recent example is the enforcement that our team has done in the Spratt Road area with regards to community concerns that have been addressed there. We know in the summertime that we have specific areas in the city where we have some concerns. Our Briarwood Market Initiative and Montreal Community Safety Project has addressed some of the social disorder issues that happen in that area, as well as petty crime. We have conducted media blitzes to inform the community that this is what is happening and this is what our teams will be doing in that area. We've received very positive feedback from the businesses and the communities in those areas. So what we have heard in identification of some issues that, and this is from our community police officers, this is from our online surveys that our community has completed, we have the capacity to listen and to identify concerns in our community. But now we need to work out how we can respond more in a better, timely manner to some of those concerns. We know that it's important that if you have a familiar face, if you have the same police officer that's coming to speak with you to deal with a neighborhood issue, we know that that is more effective. The community has told us. And most importantly, that is how you establish relationships, that it is through continuity with that same community police officer or the same officer that's going to address that problem. We have recognized that we do have a gap in how we dedicate police resources into solving some of those problems. And we're going to talk about how we're going to deploy our community response unit as well as our traffic unit to increase that capacity. We know that resolving social disorder issues at a neighborhood level to resolve them more quickly is much more effective because it's generally not a one call for a service, it's generally a repetitive issue. And I'll turn it over to Inspector Bryden to further comment.
Suffering from a man cold here, folks, so bear with me. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The community input we receive is absolutely crucial to the success of our community policing model. So we will continue to discuss and identify issues, community-based issues, with our residents, our community associations, our city councilors, essentially anybody that needs or wants to be a part of those conversations will continue to do so and be included. Our community police officers are a critical part of those discussions. They are typically the first point of contact for residents in identifying those issues. We'll only look to ways to enhance those relationships and the networks and the contacts that they already have. Online reporting has made leaps and bounds since its launch. This is an area that we have built huge capacity in gathering information from sources that I would submit otherwise we wouldn't have gotten through conventional methods. Hate-based issues is a great example of that, in that the community has said we don't necessarily need a police officer to come to our house, to come to our workplace, for us to file a report or provide some information. In fact, we learned it was an inhibitor. The online the online reporting platform alleviates those pressures for us. Our work with Merit, Multi-Agency Early Risk Intervention Tables, a community safety well-being initiative supported by Ottawa Police, who's working very closely with our community services and agencies in a risk-driven approach to building community resiliency, to reducing crime and victimization in neighborhoods. That work is specific to vulnerable families, vulnerable individuals in those neighborhoods. Our work around formalized community networks is up and developing. Again, a risk-based community model where the Ottawa Police works with community safety committees in our neighborhoods, and we co-develop joint action plans to combat, to address those issues that are identified by the community. Thank you. Folks, there's lots of ways that we're listening and receiving feedback and input. We've already begun to realign and enhance our resources and capabilities. Our frontline police officers, our community police officers work very closely together in coordinating responses to those identified social disorders, those identified community-based issues. Our crime data analysts are providing officers with information specific to crime and social disorder in neighborhoods they are working in currently. We have a couple of specialty teams on the front line who are responding to specific issues in our neighborhoods with Pivot and Bikes and Beats. In that, with respect to gun violence and the demonstrations that are unique to our downtown core, so Bikes and Beats and Pivot are taking on that. We're further building on this capacity, folks, with the development of a community response team. This community response team will have, the vision of that team is to have a citywide response, again, to the community-based issues, the social disorder that is identified to us. Again, that is a citywide response, so as far east, as far west, the downtown core, and the neighborhoods in the south end of our city, all inclusive. The staffing plan around that is to dedicate 10 officers this year in 2019, and hopefully an additional 10 officers next year in 2020. With the closing of schools across our city, We see the redeployment of school resource officers through our summer bike deployment initiative. This year was a huge success. We received tremendous amounts of feedback from community members, community organizations that felt the impact that these school resources had with, again, a citywide deployment and response to community issues. Other resources that are key to the success of our model, folks, is, of course, the traffic section that was spoken to a bit earlier, a marine dive trail that's taking care of the land and on the sea type portion of the community model, and, of course, our street crime. With respect to the community development section, folks, they are extremely active in various police community initiatives. Youth in policing, our Hoop Stars basketball program, the community ride-alongs that we are conducting, and our Futures program, to name a few. They are also the quarterback for larger events that we see experience annually with Police Week, which is up and coming in May, diversity celebrations, and human rights learning forums. Folks, we're privileged with OPS to have very strong partnerships with specific groups in our communities, and it's through different committees and councils that, such as the Community Equity Council, the Youth Advisory Committee, and the GLBTQ Committee, that we have that open dialogue, that direct line of communication with those groups to hear what challenges that they are facing that impact them on a daily basis. And that is, again, work done through the community development section, along with other facets of the community policing model as well. So I'll just wrap up by putting in a plug here for the community policing forum, again, which is up and coming and to be launched jointly with, during Police Week in May. Folks, an opportunity again for us to get together with the community, to educate one another on the model, how it's working, where we can be better, and an opportunity for us to just to promote what we are doing and how well we're doing it. And perhaps maybe to address some of the dialogue and communication around community policing. So I hope to see you there. May 13th, location is yet to be determined. And at this point, I'll turn it over to DC Bell for closing remarks. Thank you.
So as you can see from the information we've provided, we've done lots of work over the last period of time to make sure that we are listening to the community. We never abandoned community policing. We never moved away from it. But if the community's giving us feedback to say they're not feeling it the same way they did, it's important that we're responsive. And I think you're seeing us delivering on a plan that's being more responsive to the community needs. Whether it's the councillors, whether it's this board, community members, the inspectors and staff sergeants we have working on it, frontline members, I think what you see is a collective desire to make sure that we do deliver our policing service in a community-oriented fashion the best way we can. What we're doing is a work in progress. You've seen what we've already done. You've seen what's yet to come down the road. But what you have to know is we're going to continue to listen. We're going to continue to be responsive to community feedback to make sure that we're actually delivering our services in the best way that we can. So with that, I'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you. And there is a question, so we will start. But I just wanted to start because I heard you say something I didn't really agree with, so I'm going to give you a chance to clarify it a little bit, because I thought I just heard you say that you had never moved away from community policing, and you can't hear me?
Yeah, I still can't hear very well, sorry.
Okay, so let me start again. I just wanted to talk about the statement that I just heard you made, that the police service has never moved away from community policing, because that's not my understanding. I remember attending police services board meetings and asking the reduction in the 40 neighborhood officers not to happen, and the move away from community policing I never felt was in the community interest. My impression this summer when you did the strategic planning throughout the community, you got the message loud and clear from the public that they believe in community policing, as do I, that the police need to know the public and the public need to know the police, and building those strong relationships in the community is what matters and takes away a lot of problems by having that. I was under the impression the CRTs that are coming back, the 10, are in response to what you heard on the strategic planning from the community, that they wanted to see a return to community policing. So one, I'm going to give you an opportunity to answer that, because I didn't really agree with you saying we hadn't moved away from it. And then two, I want to know if 10 is enough. I think that's what we all want to know. go? Because my impression was we lost 40 and we're returning 10, so is that enough?
So on the community policing, I would actually stand by that we never abandoned community policing. We continued to have school resource officers, we continued to have community police officers. We had a lot of the infrastructure around that helped and assisted in deliver community policing. But I'm going to say, actually, the real test in it is, what's the community response? What are they feeling? And what we heard back from the community regularly was, we don't see the same level of service in terms of being responsive to low-level crime or social disorder issues in my neighborhood. So that, for us, was a post that we had to listen to. It was important that we were responsive to that. We've always been committed to working with our communities to solve problems in their neighborhoods, and that's what community policing is. When we developed our new model, what we did is we took away that contact point that they had previously. We're looking to start to again enhance that capacity so we can be responsive. So no, I don't think we moved away from community policing, but I also think it's incumbent on us that we're responsive when the community says we need to see you be more responsive more quickly, and I think that's what you're seeing here now. So is 10 enough? I believe that as we're rolling out our plan, what you've seen is you've seen 10 this year and 10 next year. So I do believe that 20 officers dedicated to this type of response, as they help build on the capacities that we see on the front line, that we see with our bikes and beats and our pivot teams, that they will be able to address the problems that are going to be identified for them. The model that we're going to use now will be different than it was before because it's not going to be geographically based. One of the things that we were able to bring in was an operations or a command center. One of the things we also brought in was the ability to gather timely information from the community about what their key priorities and key problems are. We aren't going to geographically direct this team. What we're going to do is we're going to direct them to the highest priority problems in different neighborhoods to go in and start to resolve those issues. So that's the long answer to, when we get to the end of it with 20 people, yeah, I do believe that that will be enough to meet this mandate. But that's something that we'll continue to evaluate and measure, and if there needs to be more, if there needs to be less, we'll make those adjustments.
I mean, feeling that the community that I represent have is that we have amazing community police officers. They're great. They've built amazing relationships with the community, and the community appreciates them. But they're spread thinner than they used to be, and that makes it more difficult. So I just want to understand what the community response team does. Are they going into, challenged neighborhoods and building relationships, or are they a SWAT team? They come in when there's a problem, and then they're gone, here today, gone tomorrow.
So they're not a SWAT team. I can say they're absolutely not that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start to build on what you started with. We have excellent community police officers. We know that. Every councillor I talk to talks about how strong the officer they have are there and how much they care for the community and the issues that are in those communities. So I can't say enough good things about the community police officers. I don't believe they're stretched too thin. I believe we have less than we did before, but the way that we've aligned them and the way that we've actually allowed them to start to bring information into the police service and then put it through our operations center in order to push the information out to have others respond to it is beneficial. Now what we have to do is we actually have to start to build capacity so that when they have a problem that they bring in that's identified, they have some levers to pull operationally to have people go and resolve these issues. So, and that brings us to the community response team. What they will be doing is going into neighborhoods and resolving problems that exist. No one problem in any neighborhood is the same as the next one in another neighborhood. So what we do know is that as we build the capacity of this team and as we build the skill sets and knowledge of this team, they'll be doing a host of different things. One day they may be in uniform providing proactive engagement in a neighborhood. Another day they might be doing surveillance on what's a problem address associated with drug trafficking. So it will largely depend on what the problem is they're addressing, what their activities will be. We do know that they and every other officer are strongly encouraged and expected to build strong ties to the community, and that means, like what our Bikes and Beats unit do now every day, getting out and engaging proactively with the people in that community, because that's the way we actually build community trust and community safety.
Okay, thank you. Member Egley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's been a long day, so maybe I just didn't hear you right, but I'm confused about the rollout of this model. You're moving away from the geographical model, you seem to say. So does that mean that, and you talked about a point of contact, so does that mean as a ward councillor, putting on that hat, that I no longer have a single individual to contact about a particular community? I'm confused.
Yeah, so I apologize for that. So the community response team won't be geographically based. The model that people compare to had an east, a west, and a central group that were responsible for conducting the operations that were identified from a community safety perspective. They had an east NHO team, a west NHO team, and a central NHO team. This model won't exist like that. Your community police officers will still remain in your community exactly as they are now. That model doesn't change. We know how effective it is. The challenge that they have right now is you bring them an issue of an address that they need to respond to. We need to actually identify a group that they can give that issue over to be responsive and do the operational work around it. Your CPOs can't do it all. We know that. They will still be aligned as they are. We're just building their capacity to be able to respond to these issues in the community.
So we'll have the complement of CPOs we have now.
Absolutely.
Plus an additional 10 officers this year and an additional 10 officers the next year?
That's correct.
So 30 officers, because there's what? There's 10 CPOs now, right?
That's correct.
So at the end of 2 years, there'll be 30 people doing community policing in one way or another.
So I would actually argue there's many more than that, because there's 18 who are engaged with the Bikes and Beats unit. There's another just over 10 associated with the Pivot team. There's frontline community engagement work that's being done on a regular basis. So although you will have the same number of CPOs, 20 community response team officers, you'll then have the other numbers of the Bikes and Beats and the Pivots team to be able to deliver this work.
No, but again,
the CPOs, and the...
You're adding 20 additional officers over 2 years to the community policing model, correct?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Well, if that's the case, that's not a bad thing. I want to go back to your point, though. You heard from the community that the contact point had been taken away. And when you rolled out the plan a couple of years ago, you told us over and over again there was going to continue to be a single point of contact for the communities. We didn't really believe that, but that's what you told us. And now you seem to be saying, well, you were right, we were wrong, there wasn't a point of contact, and we're going to bring that back. How are you going to bring that back?
So I don't believe I said we took the point of contact away. I actually think we've spent a lot of time making sure as an organization that we do have good points of contact, whether that be our community police officer.
What you said was you heard from the community that point of contact had been taken away, and you wanted to address that.
So what we heard from the community was the response to what that point of contact was hearing wasn't the same as it used to be. I can go and tell my community police officer that I have a problem address on my street, and I'm not getting the response to deal with that like I used to. The community police officer still exists to bring the information forward to, and we know we've actually built our capacity to listen to the community. Our problem wasn't the listening, it was the doing of the issues that were existing. So what we're now trying to do is build that dedicated unit that can be accessed by one of the avenues would be the community police officers in order to fix those issues that are identified.
Okay, and again, I'm cautiously optimistic. I always thought the changes to the community policing model were change for change's sake. We had a model that worked very well, that the community appreciated, didn't complain about, and you guys, for whatever reason, wanted to change it. And ever since then, we have felt it from our community. They've been upset with it. They haven't been happy with it. I mean, I was hoping when you're going to come back with a model, it was going to be, you know what, we're going to go back to what we used to do. It wasn't broken. We didn't need to fix it. So that's why I say I'm cautiously optimistic if you're adding these additional officers, but I still think the community would be happier if you move back to the model that you had that worked. The other question or comment I wanted to make was around the online reporting for traffic. That is a constant point of frustration for members of the public. Members of the public do not want to do this. They do not want to have to go on every time they see a speeding vehicle in a school zone. They don't want to go on every time they see a speeding vehicle go by a park. If they say they're speeding from this, in front of our school every morning from 8 to 10, they do not understand, and they do not have the time in their busy lives to sit down and do it every day for the next 30 days, so you've got 30 complaints in from each person. They don't understand why it has to work that way. Didn't used to work that way. It used to work that the community association or the school council would go to the community policing officer or go to the counselor and say, this is an ongoing problem in front of our school, in front of our park, in front of the hospital, and you guys would send out some traffic enforcement to deal with that. Doesn't work that way anymore. And you can sit there and say it's working great, but I can tell you, as someone who gets the feedback from the community, it is not working great. The members of the community are very frustrated with that approach. They find the online reporting system clunky, cumbersome, time-consuming. They do not want to do it. And therefore, and part of that is they feel they're not getting any benefit for doing that. They feel that you're asking us to take our time out of every day, make these reports, and they don't know what the magic number is. They don't know how many reports you need, how many complaints you need. Before you press that button, you send a traffic enforcement officer out to that corner in front of that school. So if you're hearing that from the community, your community is very different from my community, and I suspect very different from a lot of councillors' communities, because that's certainly not what we're hearing. So if there was something that needs to be fixed in this, it's that online reporting system. If you want to continue to use it, you have to make it simpler. You have to give the community some sense of what they need to do, what target number they need to hit, because they're just frustrated. They're frustrated that they're going on, they're reporting, and nothing is happening. So that's more of a comment than a question, but okay. It's what we're feeling every day.
Okay, so thank you.
If I can just make a few comments, Councillor. We did recognize there were some challenges with our online reporting, and we have made some updates, so I'll bring that back again to see what else can we do to improve that system. But we do recognize the community safety zones, such as our school zones, that we do targeted enforcement in those zones, because we know it's a community safety where we want our kids that get on and off the school bus to feel safe. We also brought heat maps to all of the councillors where it shows where we receive complaints, where we have accidents with injuries, and then where we've done our enforcement and it actually matches up quite well. So we do encourage your constituents to continue to report online. I know we hear it via Facebook accounts through our community police officers about the traffic complaints that you do receive. But I also know that we do manage all of the complaints that come in through the mayor's office, to the police service board chair, to our chief. And we have seen a decrease, but that's also because of the councillors encouraging their constituents to file online. Plus, we do take reports, traffic reports, through our call center where they have specific information, if they have a license plate, if they can identify the driver, and that is actually assigned to one of our traffic officers for a follow-up. So we are trying to get better with the online because we're aware of that frustration. But we do a lot of enforcement in our community safety zones. The other area is speed boards that the councillors do use, and once we do get a complaint in an area where there is a speed board, we do analyze that data and deploy our traffic officers there, so it's at the time when we are seeing people speeding, so that we're more effective in and where we deploy our resources.
And I appreciate the answer, but I'm telling you there's still significant frustration out there with that model. Community associations, parent councils, school principals do not understand why, if they tell you this is what's happening in our community, it's what we see every day, that you guys are not moving on it unless you get the data points on your online reporting system. And I'll just leave it at that.
Madam Chair, I can speak to that as well. I think, you know, if we're going to be intelligence-led policing and we're going to look at assigning our precious resources where we most need them, we need the data to enable to help us understand where the challenges are and where we need to invest those resources. We get a huge amount of traffic complaints. That's the #1 complaint that we get across our community, and we're just trying to be smarter using technology and using data points to be able to help us put those resources where we need them, and also continue working with the councillor's office and the community associations to do an assessment to see exactly where we need to put those resources. But we understand there's still some gaps, there's some frustrations, but our teams will continue to work to address those.
Just a really quick point. I guess what I'm saying, Chief, is I'm not sure you're getting good data. If the community is throwing up its hands and saying we don't want to report anymore because we're not seeing the benefit, then I don't know that you're hitting the hot spots. And I guess the heat maps you're showing us are great because that correlates with your data. But if your data is wrong from the very beginning, then that's what I'm trying to get across to you. If people are not reporting, then you're not getting good data. And you're sending your people out to where you're hearing, but you're not hearing all of it. People are not reporting.
Yeah. And if I could just add to that, what worries me...
No, we've got a list. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to let you add to it, but there's a few other people on the list. No worries. Is that it, Member Eglet? Is that it? Yes. Okay. Member Blowstein.
Hopefully I can be heard. So I have two questions really. One of them is there any consideration being given to increasing the use of some of the community police stations, such as the one on MacArthur, which I passed every day for 2 years now, and I've never seen it open, unlocked, a police vehicle there, unless somebody's sitting in it. So that's just one that I'm familiar with, but I'm sure that there are other ones across the city that really are not being utilized, and we've got the space, and is there some sort of way that we can use them more effectively and more efficiently as a resource for the community members, the people who live in those neighborhoods on those streets, to be able to build relationships with the officers?
So on the bricks and mortar building around our community police centers, we have lots of data over lots of years that say that's not actually how the community wants us to engage with them. Those bricks and mortar buildings were not highly utilized. We used to have really extended hours there to create opportunities for community to come in, and that's not how they didn't come in. They didn't come and pick up the brochures. They didn't come and make the reports there. We've tried to make sure that we're providing service to the community in the way that they want to receive it. So that's why we've downscaled our hours in those different areas and created different opportunities for the community to come. So we don't get a lot of input from the community saying you need to increase the hours of those buildings, because that's how it will be most beneficial.
Okay, thank you. My other question is, I think that when you talk about community policing, you're having a vision of one thing, and I think that the community at large is thinking more neighborhood, geographic-based policing. And I think that's what they're really looking for from the people I've spoken to. I think that the city councilors would probably agree with that, but I'm not sure. That I think they're really looking for old-fashioned neighborhood policing that's geographic-based, as opposed to the broader community policing as you define it.
So two pieces to that. One is, I actually believe that community policing needs to be geographically based. It needs to be about officers engaging with the communities in the neighborhoods and communities that they're in, to have those discussions to figure out the issues. Like Inspector Bryden spoke about, we are having a forum, and that's exactly where we want the community to come forward and work with us to help mutually define what they see as community policing. So although it is neighborhood and community based for us, we still want that input and have the community come so that we can work with them to define what they see as community policing.
I think that if you speak to probably a lot of the city councilors, and if you speak to many community members, and I think that they've tried to define it very clearly, and I think it's not necessarily being heard, because they're saying community policing with a different vision. The interpretation is different, And so, you know, you're agreeing on the word community policing, but you're not agreeing on the definition of what a community police officer really is, that it's somebody who's really dedicated to that geographic region as opposed to this broader view. So just
Okay, thank you, Member Bluston. Member Valiquette.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I'm talking about 2007, 12 years ago. When I was the ED of the Vanier BIA, we had a model that worked. And I see that Madame Lucie Villeneuve is sitting in the audience here representing the Vanier community. Thank you for being here tonight, Lucie. We worked very hard with the police in those years, and we came up with a model that worked. And I think BIAs are definitely one source. You have people like Lucie that work very hard within their communities that can provide you with the information that you're looking for. But the need to return to boots on the ground. I'm a big believer of Policing 101, where it's a personal, one-on-one, informative exchange that takes place, and you have to build that trust with the community in order. And you've done it before, you can do it again. I have all the faith in you because I know how well you can. I think it's really good to have that BIA central. They have offices. You know, the police officers in those days would come to us almost on a regular, everyday basis, and they would exchange information with our staff. They would have meetings in the evenings during the day with the residents that were invited to come to sit around the table, and we would identify together what the problem was and what the solution was. Because the residents understand they have to play their part. They know that. This whole business that's happening on Montreal Road, I remember the days of the Burger King. And Burger King was a very important player in our business community there. But it was work. Everybody had to get together to have those discussions. So I'm hoping that within your plan, you're going to have these geographical areas where you're going to be able to exchange, engage, bring them to the table in order to have those discussions. Thank you.
So one of the things we can speak about is actually grounds that Vanier and other high-density areas are seeing through our Bikes and Beats unit. I know that since the beginning of January that there's been a considerable amount of time by that group, either speaking with the members of the BIA, but definitely with business owners up and down Montreal Road, as well as other areas in the city. So I am happy to say that we have already started that process, and we are seeing members of our service out walking the beats when it's allowed, when it's able, not right now, but they'll be riding bikes in those areas because we know how important that visibility and presence is within those communities. We also depend on our police officers to start to have those conversations with members of the community like Burger King in order to make sure that they help us with the solution to some of the safety issues that exist.
Is that it? Thank you, Member Valiquette. Member Meehan.
I'm very lucky because I represent a community where we don't have a high crime rate, and it just concerns me. I mean, I have great respect for our community police officers in that area, but it just concerns me that it seems, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but there's going to be a problem before we see a community response team come in. And I'd just like to say that, to validate what we're saying here is, boots are important, even in low crime areas, because I think it's better to be proactive sometimes to let the community know that the police presence is there than to be reactive when something happens. There's a great value in knowing that there's a police officer somewhere in your community. You know?
So we absolutely agree, and the example is traffic. Traffic is a key concern in your area. Community response team isn't going to actually respond to traffic issue, but as you know, our traffic unit will go and take on those issues within your ward. Every ward's different. Everybody has community policing, community safety needs. Our CPOs do a really good job of working with the communities to identify what are the specific community safety issues in an area, like traffic, like problem addresses, like engagement of business owners, to make sure that it's not a one-size-fits-all for the entire city, but that we have the resources that we're able to deploy. The community response team, along with the bikes and beats and pivot and our traffic units and our school resource officers, will be another capacity for us to be able to reach into those specific needs within a community.
Is that it, Member Meehan? Member Smallwood.
Thank you. There's been much mention of the Beats and Bikes unit, which I think is fantastic. It's wonderful. It has the guys out there and the girls out there, and you can see them. I just wondered, I know you were working on enhancing their ability to communicate and to do research on their handheld units, and I'm wondering, I assume that hasn't been rolled out yet, and what is the plan for that now?
Actually, it has. That's part of our frontline mobility project as part of our modernization roadmap. And I can tell you that those officers have been used as a pilot. They do now have handheld devices like many of our frontline officers do. And theirs are even more capable that they can use it like what a regular mobile data terminal would be used. So they have been rolled out, the latest equipment we have. They are piloting for us to be more able to broadly deploy it, and so far it's been very successful.
What length is this pilot, and when do you expect to be rolling them out to everyone?
So we are rolling out phones. All of our frontline officers will have handheld devices by the end of Q2 of this year. What we're doing is we're right now piloting for 90 days the actual software that they're using, the actual the information where they're accessing RMS. What we'll do from there is we'll decide how we need to tweak it or how we can better use it. What are the processes and business rules we have behind them using it to best support them before we more broadly roll it out. That group won't be losing that capability. They will continue to maintain it, and we'll refine that before we roll it out to all of our frontline officers.
Okay, thank you, Member Smallwood. Member Velikat.
I'd be curious, can you tell us exactly what that handheld will do that they don't have access to right now? And just for the purpose of everyone in the audience, can you tell us what PIVOT stands for?
I most definitely can. So PIVOT stands for, I'll start with that. It's the Prevention and Intervention of Violence in Ottawa. It's been a part of the rebranding efforts that Deputy Chief Jaswell has gone through to actually refine DART and the activities of what the old DART team did. So that's what PIVOT is. In terms of the handheld devices, so what they'll have is they'll have all the native features, which is in itself is very helpful. That's telephone calling, scheduling, emailing, texting. They'll have all those abilities, which we know in itself will save time, and the sky's the limit in terms of what other additions we give to them. Right now, what we're looking at is the mobile data terminal information, so they can access CAD and RMS. We know that we're looking for a wiki type solution that can help them solve how to deal with different situations. What's the paperwork I have to do for a drug-impaired driver? How you can go on a wiki-based solution to resolve that. It also gives them access to our current intranet information that'll include rostering, scheduling, time off applications. So to give them that power in their hands gives them much more capabilities, and we know will create efficiencies in what we're delivering.
So is that the equivalent of what the computer is in the patrol car?
So it will get there. Right now, it's a regular Samsung phone like we all carry. We will get to the point that it will be able to access, once security is resolved around, it will be able to access all our RMS, all of our internal documents, to be able to write and edit and update them. From a security foundational perspective, we're not at that point to roll it out to everyone, but we are quickly, through the modernization roadmap, moving towards that.
Any other questions? Well, maybe just to wrap up then, I was happy to hear your question on pivot because I've been in an acronym haze since I took on this role. There's so many acronyms. I distinctly recall Deputy Chief Jill Skinner when she was talking about the community policing change in the model, saying it was a budget-driven exercise. And I just want you to have a takeaway from this discussion tonight that I think this board is very interested in seeing more of the geographical-based community police officers, boots on the ground in the neighborhood. That's what we all seem to agree worked best in our neighborhoods, and I think what we would like to see this new model move towards. So I think that's your takeaway, Deputy Chief, for tonight, and I'm sure you haven't heard the end of it yet, because once we get to budget, I think we'll be asking about how we're deploying our resources and how we're getting the most effective use of every one of our police officers in our communities. Oh, and now Member Mann would like to add something.
Sorry, Diane. Could I just ask, how much is it going to cost us to put a handheld device in every officer's hands? And because I know it's expensive.
So it's actually part of the modernization roadmap, and it's a package and a budget that's come before this board before and been approved by this board. The exact costing of the handheld device I don't have in front of me, but it is something that has been brought and approved by this board previously.
And you feel it's necessary?
Oh, absolutely. So we're already seeing efficiencies with officers having it, anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes a day of efficiencies that they're not in the office doing emails, doing scheduling, doing their workflow that is accessible from these now. That translates into boots on the ground in the neighborhood doing work. So far, anecdotally, an evaluation hasn't been done, but we are definitely seeing the returns that is allowing them to be in the communities more.
Because I really don't want